The study of language, commonly known as linguistics, is a scientific discipline devoted to understanding the nature, structure, and function of human language. It investigates how language is organized at different levels, including sounds, words, sentences, and meaning, and how these elements work together to create effective communication. Linguistics also examines how language is used in real-life situations, how it varies across individuals and communities, and how it changes over time. As a uniquely human system of communication, language allows people to express ideas, emotions, intentions, and abstract concepts. The study of language seeks to uncover the underlying rules and patterns that make this complex system possible. These rules are not always consciously known by speakers, yet they guide everyday speech and understanding. By analyzing these patterns, linguistics explains how speakers can produce and understand an infinite number of sentences using a finite set of elements. Linguistics also focuses on both spoken and written forms of language. Spoken language is studied in terms of pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation, while written language is examined as a symbolic system that represents speech through visual signs. In addition, the field explores the mental processes involved in language production and comprehension, investigating how the brain stores words, constructs sentences, and interprets meaning in context. Beyond individual cognition, the study of language considers the social and cultural dimensions of communication. Language plays a crucial role in shaping social identity, expressing group membership, and maintaining cultural traditions. It reflects social relationships, power structures, and cultural values, and it varies according to factors such as region, class, gender, and situation. Because of this, linguistics is closely connected to disciplines such as psychology, sociology, anthropology, and neuroscience. Together, these fields help explain how language reflects human thought, supports social interaction, and functions as a central component of human life. This topic explores the possible origins of human language and seeks to explain how the first linguistic systems may have emerged among early humans. Because spoken language leaves no direct fossil record, researchers rely on indirect evidence from biology, anthropology, archaeology, and comparative studies of human and animal communication. As a result, several theories have been proposed to account for the beginnings of language, each highlighting different aspects of early human life and behavior. One group of theories suggests that language originated from natural sounds and emotional expressions. According to imitation-based theories, early humans copied sounds from their environment, such as animal calls or natural noises, and gradually associated these sounds with specific objects or actions. Emotional vocalization theories propose that spontaneous cries expressing pain, joy, fear, or surprise were the earliest forms of speech. Over time, these instinctive sounds may have become more controlled and systematically used for communication. Other theories emphasize rhythmic work sounds, suggesting that coordinated physical activities, such as lifting or building, required shared vocal rhythms that later developed into structured speech. Another important perspective highlights gesture-based communication as a foundation for language. Early humans likely relied heavily on physical gestures and body movements to convey meaning before the development of complex vocal systems. Gestures may have provided a visual and intentional means of communication, eventually combining with vocal sounds to form a more flexible and expressive system. Evidence from modern sign languages supports the idea that language does not depend solely on speech, but can exist in multiple modalities. Biological evolution played a crucial role in making language possible. Changes such as upright posture, altered breathing patterns, allowing for greater control of exhalation during speech, the lowering of the larynx, the development of a flexible tongue and lips, and changes in the shape of the vocal tract enabled humans to produce a wide range of distinct sounds. At the same time, brain growth and increased neural complexity supported advanced cognitive abilities such as memory, symbolism, and abstract thinking, all of which are essential for language. Theories of innateness argue that humans are biologically predisposed to acquire language. According to this view, language is not simply a cultural invention learned through imitation, but a natural human capacity supported by genetic and neurological structures. Children across cultures acquire language rapidly and without formal instruction, which suggests the presence of an inborn linguistic ability. From this perspective, the origin of language lies not only in social interaction and environmental pressures, but also in the unique biological makeup of the human species. Human language is distinguished by creativity, which allows speakers to produce and understand completely new sentences that they have never heard before. Unlike animal signals, which are typically limited to a fixed set of messages, human language can generate an infinite number of expressions from a finite set of sounds and rules. This creativity makes it possible to communicate complex ideas, emotions, and detailed information in flexible ways. Another key feature is displacement, the ability to talk about things that are not present in the immediate environment. Humans can refer to past experiences, future plans, distant locations, and even imaginary or hypothetical situations. Animal communication, by contrast, is usually tied to the here and now, responding directly to immediate stimuli such as food, danger, or mating opportunities. Human language is also arbitrary, meaning there is no natural connection between a word and what it represents. The form of a word does not resemble its meaning, and different languages use different sounds to refer to the same objects or ideas. Animal signals, on the other hand, often have a more direct or instinctive connection to what they express, such as alarm calls that are automatically triggered by specific threats. Productivity and duality further set human language apart. Productivity allows humans to continuously create new words and expressions, while duality means that language operates on two levels. Individual sounds that carry no meaning on their own combine to form meaningful units. Animal systems lack this two-level structure and have very limited capacity for expansion. Finally, while animal communication systems are largely instinctive and inherited, human language is learned culturally through interaction within a speech community, making it adaptable, diverse, and constantly evolving. Morphology is the branch of linguistics that studies the internal structure of words and how words are formed. Its primary focus is on morphemes, which are the smallest units of meaning or grammatical function in a language. By analyzing morphemes, morphology explains how complex words are built from simpler elements and how those elements contribute to meaning and grammatical relationships. Morphemes are generally divided into two main types: free morphemes and bound morphemes. Free morphemes can stand alone as independent words, such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. Bound morphemes, in contrast, cannot appear by themselves and must be attached to another form. These include prefixes and suffixes that add grammatical or semantic information to a base word, such as plural endings, tense markers, or markers of comparison. Morphology also explains how words change form to express grammatical information. Inflectional morphology deals with changes that indicate tense, number, person, gender, or comparison without altering the basic meaning or word class. For example, adding a suffix to show past tense or plurality modifies a word to fit its grammatical context. Derivational morphology, on the other hand, creates new words by changing the meaning or grammatical category of a base form, such as turning a verb into a noun or an adjective into an adverb. In addition, morphology accounts for patterns of regularity and variation within a language. It explains why certain word forms follow predictable rules while others appear irregular, and how speakers intuitively recognize and produce correct word forms. Through the study of morphology, linguists gain insight into how vocabulary is structured, how new words enter the language, and how meaning and grammar are systematically encoded within words. Grammar is the branch of linguistics that describes the system of rules governing how words are organized and combined to form phrases and sentences in a language. It provides the framework that allows speakers to produce structured, meaningful expressions rather than random collections of words. Grammar explains how different elements of a language relate to one another and how these relationships contribute to clear communication. A central component of grammar is the classification of words into parts of speech, such as nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, conjunctions, and articles. Grammar also accounts for agreement, showing how words change form to match one another in number, person, gender, or tense. For example, verbs may change to agree with their subjects, and nouns may take different forms to indicate singular or plural meanings. Sentence structure is another key aspect, as grammar determines the order in which words and phrases appear and how their position affects meaning. Grammar can be approached in two main ways. A descriptive approach focuses on observing and analyzing how language is actually used by speakers in real contexts without judging it as right or wrong. This approach seeks to identify patterns and regularities in natural language use. In contrast, a prescriptive approach establishes rules about how language should be used, often based on traditional standards or formal conventions. These rules are commonly taught in educational settings and applied in formal writing. Understanding grammar is essential for explaining how meaning is structured and conveyed in language. It helps clarify how subtle changes in word form or sentence organization can lead to differences in meaning. By studying grammar, linguists and language learners gain insight into the underlying system that enables effective communication and allows speakers to interpret and produce an unlimited range of meaningful sentences. Syntax is the branch of linguistics concerned with the structure of sentences and the principles that govern how words are arranged into phrases and clauses. It examines word order, sentence patterns, and the relationships between different elements within a sentence. Syntax explains why certain word combinations are acceptable in a language while others are not, even when the individual words themselves are meaningful. A key focus of syntax is how phrases are formed and organized. Words are grouped into units, such as noun phrases and verb phrases, and these units follow specific rules that determine their position and function within a sentence. These syntactic rules allow speakers to understand who is doing what to whom, even when sentences become long or complex. By studying syntax, linguists can explain how meaning is shaped not only by words themselves, but also by their arrangement. Syntax also distinguishes between deep structure and surface structure. Deep structure refers to the underlying abstract representation of a sentence that captures its core meaning and grammatical relationships. Surface structure is the actual form the sentence takes, when spoken or written. Different surface structures can share the same deep structure, which helps explain why sentences with different word orders or forms can express similar meanings. This distinction is especially useful in explaining transformations such as questions, passive constructions, and relative clauses. Another important role of syntax is accounting for ambiguity and sentence variation. Some sentences can have more than one interpretation because the structure allows multiple readings. Syntax helps identify where this ambiguity arises and how different structural analyses lead to different meanings. It also explains how languages allow variation in sentence form without changing meaning, such as through active and passive constructions. Generative grammar plays a central role in syntactic theory by demonstrating how a limited set of rules can generate an infinite number of sentences. According to this approach, speakers internalize a system of syntactic rules that enables them to produce and understand sentences they have never encountered before. This highlights the creativity and productivity of human language and shows that syntax is not merely about memorizing sentences, but about mastering an underlying rule-based system that makes limitless expression possible. Semantics is the branch of linguistics that examines meaning in language and how meaning is systematically represented and understood. It focuses on how words, phrases, and sentences convey meaning independent of the specific situations in which they are used. By studying semantics, linguists aim to explain how language users are able to understand meanings consistently and share understanding despite differences in experience and context. One central concern of semantics is referential meaning, which deals with the relationship between linguistic expressions and the objects, entities, or concepts they refer to in the real or imagined world. Words can point to concrete objects, abstract ideas, actions, or states, and semantics explains how these references are established and maintained within a language system. In addition, semantics studies semantic roles, which describe the relationships between verbs and the participants involved in an action, such as who performs an action, who receives it, and who is affected by it. Semantics also investigates lexical relations, which describe how meanings of words are connected to one another within the mental lexicon. These relations include synonymy, where words have similar meanings, antonymy, where meanings are opposite, and other relationships that organize vocabulary into structured networks. Through these relationships, speakers can understand subtle differences in meaning and choose words appropriately in communication. Another important concept in semantics is that of prototypes, which explains how categories are organized around typical or central examples rather than strict boundaries. For instance, some members of a category are perceived as more representative than others, and this affects how people understand and classify meanings. This approach reflects how human cognition naturally organizes knowledge and meaning. Overall, semantics helps explain how humans organize, interpret, and store meaning in a systematic way. It shows that meaning in language is not random, but follows structured principles that allow speakers to communicate complex ideas clearly and efficiently. By revealing these underlying principles, semantics provides insight into how language connects thought, knowledge, and human understanding. Pragmatics is the branch of linguistics that studies how meaning is created and interpreted in context, focusing on what speakers intend to communicate rather than the literal meaning of words alone. It examines how language is used in real situations and how listeners rely on shared knowledge, assumptions, and social cues to understand what is meant. Pragmatics explains why the same sentence can have different meanings depending on who says it, where it is said, and under what circumstances. A key area within pragmatics is deixis, which involves words and expressions whose meaning depends on context, such as references to time, place, and participants in a conversation. Words like this, that, here, now, and pronouns such as I and you can only be fully understood by considering the situation in which they are used. Pragmatics also studies reference and inference, explaining how speakers refer to people or things, and how listeners infer intended meaning even when it is not explicitly stated. Presupposition is another important concept in pragmatics. It refers to background assumptions that speakers take for granted when they speak. These assumptions are often not stated directly, but are necessary for an utterance to make sense. Closely related to this is the study of implied meaning, where listeners go beyond the literal interpretation of words to understand what the speaker truly intends, often relying on context and conversational principles. Pragmatics also examines politeness and how social relationships influence language use. Speakers adjust their language based on factors such as status, familiarity, and cultural norms in order to be respectful, indirect, or persuasive. Speech acts are another central focus, highlighting how utterances function as actions. Through language, speakers can request, promise, apologize, warn, or command, showing that speaking is not just about conveying information, but about performing actions within social interaction. Overall, pragmatics explains how effective communication depends on more than grammar and vocabulary. It reveals how meaning emerges through interaction, context, and shared understanding, and how social and cultural factors shape the way language is used and interpreted in everyday life. Discourse analysis is the branch of linguistics that examines language beyond the level of individual sentences, focusing on how meaning is created and interpreted across longer stretches of communication, such as conversations, written texts, speeches, and narratives. It investigates how speakers and writers organize their messages, maintain coherence, and ensure that ideas are connected in a way that makes sense to listeners or readers. Discourse analysis seeks to understand the patterns, structures, and strategies that underlie effective communication in real contexts. A central concern of discourse analysis is coherence, which refers to the sense of unity and logical flow within a text or conversation. Coherence is not inherent in sentences themselves, but emerges from the way language users connect ideas, reference previous information, and follow shared norms of communication. Related to coherence are concepts such as cohesion, which deals with the linguistic tools, like pronouns, conjunctions, and lexical repetition, that link sentences together, and sequencing, which organizes information in a meaningful order. Turn-taking is another key aspect of discourse analysis, particularly in spoken interaction. It studies how participants coordinate their contributions, signal when they have finished speaking, and respond to one another. This includes adjacency pairs, such as greetings or question and answer sequences, as well as more complex structures like insertion sequences that occur within ongoing interactions. These patterns help participants manage conversation smoothly and maintain social order. Discourse analysis also examines implicature, where speakers imply meaning that is not explicitly stated, and how listeners infer these intended meanings. Successful interpretation often relies on shared background knowledge, cultural norms, and assumptions about the speaker's intentions. Analysts study how context, speaker roles, and social conventions influence interpretation, revealing that understanding discourse is an active process involving both linguistic competence and social cognition. Overall, discourse analysis demonstrates that language functions as a social and interactive tool. It shows how meaning is constructed collaboratively across sentences and utterances, how speakers navigate conversational norms, and how both explicit and implicit communication contribute to effective human interaction. By analyzing discourse, linguists gain insight into how language operates in everyday life and how it reflects social, cognitive, and cultural processes. First language acquisition refers to the natural process through which children acquire their mother tongue, typically beginning from birth. This process unfolds through a series of developmental stages that reflect both cognitive and social growth. It starts with pre-linguistic vocalizations, such as cooing and babbling, where infants experiment with sounds and gradually develop the ability to produce syllables. Around the age of 1, children enter the early word stage, using single words to convey meaning and beginning to expand their vocabulary rapidly. As they grow, they progress to the two-word stage and beyond, combining words into simple sentences that gradually increase in complexity. By the grammatical development stage, children begin to grasp the rules of syntax, morphology, and phonology, allowing them to construct more complex and meaningful utterances. Several theories attempt to explain how children acquire language. Nativist theories, notably proposed by Noam Chomsky, argue that humans possess an innate language faculty or universal grammar that guides language acquisition. In contrast, cognitive and interactionist approaches emphasize the role of general cognitive abilities, social interaction, and environmental input in shaping language development. Despite these theoretical differences, extensive research shows that children acquire language rapidly, systematically, and with remarkable consistency across cultures, highlighting the unique human capacity for linguistic communication. First language acquisition not only reflects the child's growing cognitive and social abilities, but also lays the foundation for lifelong communication, literacy, and learning. Second language acquisition, SLA, is the field that explores how individuals learn a language beyond their native tongue. Unlike first language acquisition, which occurs naturally and instinctively in early childhood, SLA often takes place in diverse contexts, including formal classroom instruction, immersion in a language-rich environment, or self-directed learning. This field examines a wide range of factors that influence how effectively and efficiently a person acquires an additional language. Key factors include age, which affects cognitive flexibility and pronunciation abilities, motivation, both intrinsic and extrinsic, which drives persistence and engagement, and transfer from the first language, L1, where knowledge of the native language can either facilitate or interfere with learning the second language, L2. Another important concept in SLA is fossilization, which occurs when learners' language errors become fixed despite continued exposure or instruction. The critical period hypothesis suggests that younger learners are more likely to achieve native-like pronunciation and fluency due to neurological plasticity, whereas adults may retain stronger grammatical awareness but face challenges in accent and spontaneous speech. SLA research also explores cognitive, social, and cultural influences, including working memory, learning strategies, and interaction with native speakers, which shape the trajectory of language development. Despite differences between child and adult learners, evidence shows that language acquisition in both cases involves systematic stages, from initial comprehension and basic vocabulary acquisition to increasingly complex grammar, pragmatic competence, and fluency. Understanding SLA not only provides insight into the mechanisms of human language learning, but also informs language teaching, curriculum design, and methods for effective communication in multilingual societies. Gestures and sign languages play a fundamental role in human communication, illustrating that language extends beyond spoken words. Gestures are deliberate or spontaneous movements of the hands, arms, face, or body that accompany speech, often enhancing or clarifying meaning. They can serve multiple communicative functions, such as emphasizing a point, conveying emotions, indicating spatial relationships, or even substituting for words entirely. Remarkably, gestures can also occur without a listener present, as individuals may use them to aid thinking, memory, or problem solving, highlighting their cognitive as well as communicative significance. Sign languages take the role of gestures to a fully developed linguistic level. They are complete natural languages used primarily by deaf communities, featuring rich grammatical structures, phonology, morphology, and syntax. Sign languages are not merely visual representations of spoken languages. Each has its own vocabulary, rules, and cultural nuances. For instance, American Sign Language, ASL, differs significantly from British Sign Language, BSL, or other regional sign languages, demonstrating that these systems are independent linguistic entities. The study of gestures and sign languages provides important evidence that language is not restricted to speech. It shows that humans are capable of conveying complex, abstract ideas through visual manual channels, emphasizing the flexibility and adaptability of human communication. Furthermore, research in this area informs fields such as psycholinguistics, cognitive science, and language education, shedding light on how meaning is constructed, how languages can evolve in different modalities, and how communicative strategies support learning and social interaction. Written language is the visual representation of spoken language through a system of symbols, enabling humans to record, transmit, and preserve information across both time and space. Unlike speech, which is acquired naturally during early childhood, writing must be learned consciously and deliberately, typically through formal education. The invention of writing marked one of humanity's most significant cognitive and cultural achievements, allowing for the documentation of ideas, laws, literature, history, and scientific knowledge, and laying the foundation for complex civilizations. Writing systems are diverse, reflecting the different ways human societies have developed to represent sounds, words, or concepts. Pictographic systems, such as those found in early Sumerian cuneiform or Egyptian hieroglyphs, use images to represent objects or ideas directly. These systems are often concrete and visually iconic, allowing readers to interpret meaning even without knowledge of the spoken language. Logographic systems, by contrast, assign symbols to entire words or morphemes, as in traditional Chinese writing, where a single character can represent a complete semantic unit. Syllabic systems map symbols to individual syllables of a language, as exemplified by the Japanese kana scripts, enabling the construction of words from standardized sound units. Alphabetic systems represent individual phonemes or sounds through discrete letters, as seen in English, Spanish, and many other modern languages. English illustrates both the strengths and challenges of alphabetic writing. Its orthography is only partially phonetic. While letters generally correspond to sounds, English spelling shows considerable irregularity due to historical sound shifts, borrowings from other languages such as Latin, French, and Greek, and the evolution of pronunciation over centuries. For example, words like night or through retain letters that no longer reflect contemporary pronunciation. This irregularity makes English literacy acquisition more complex than in languages with highly consistent phoneme-to-letter correspondence, such as Italian or Finnish. The development of writing involves multiple skills, including letter recognition, spelling, punctuation, syntax, and text organization. Children typically acquire these skills gradually, beginning with simple symbol recognition and progressing to fluent reading and writing. Beyond literacy in the practical sense, writing also supports higher cognitive functions. It allows humans to engage in abstract reasoning, plan for the future, reflect on experiences, and communicate across generations in ways that spoken language alone cannot achieve. Historically, writing is a relatively recent human invention, emerging only around 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, long after speech had become the primary means of communication. Its emergence transformed human society, facilitating the creation of legal codes, religious texts, literature, scientific records, and administrative systems. Moreover, writing has enabled the standardization of languages and the preservation of cultural heritage, making it indispensable in education, governance, and the advancement of knowledge. In addition, written language is not just a transcription of speech. It has its own structure, conventions, and stylistic possibilities. Written communication allows for greater complexity, with the ability to organize ideas hierarchically, use punctuation to indicate pauses. Language variation and dialects explores how language differs across geographical, social, and cultural contexts. One of the most noticeable forms of variation is the regional accent, which affects the pronunciation of vowels, consonants, intonation patterns, and stress. Accents allow listeners to often identify the speaker's regional or social background, reflecting the influence of historical settlement patterns, migration, and interaction with neighboring speech communities. Closely related to accents are dialects, which encompass not only pronunciation differences, but also variations in grammar, vocabulary, and usage. For instance, dialects may differ in verb conjugation, word choice, sentence structure, and even idiomatic expressions, demonstrating that language is deeply intertwined with local culture and identity. Linguists often study dialects through linguistic surveys, collecting spoken or written data from speakers across different regions. These studies reveal that dialects are not strictly bounded. Instead of sharp borders, language variation exists along a continuum, where adjacent regions exhibit gradual changes and more distant regions show increasingly distinct linguistic features. Dialectology also examines how historical events, social stratification, and cultural contact contribute to variation. For example, trade routes, colonization, and migration can introduce new words, pronunciations, or grammatical patterns, which may spread unevenly across communities. Moreover, regional dialects can coexist with a standard language, often taught in schools and used in formal contexts, while local dialects thrive in informal communication. This dynamic highlights how speakers navigate multiple linguistic systems, balancing regional identity with social norms. Understanding dialects and language variation is crucial, not only for linguistic research, but also for applications such as speech recognition technology, language teaching, sociolinguistic analysis, and cultural preservation. Studying dialects illuminates the richness and adaptability of human language, showing that linguistic diversity is a natural feature rather than an anomaly, and emphasizing the interplay between language, geography, society, and history. Language and culture are profoundly interconnected, forming a dynamic relationship in which each shapes and reflects the other. Language is not merely a tool for communication. It is a repository of cultural knowledge, beliefs, and social norms. Through language, communities encode and transmit cultural categories, values, traditions, and social relationships across generations. Every word, expression, or grammatical structure can carry cultural significance, revealing how speakers perceive the world, organize social interactions, and express identity. One of the central ideas in the study of language and culture is the concept of linguistic relativity, often associated with the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. This theory suggests that the structure and vocabulary of a language influence how its speakers think, perceive reality, and categorize experiences. For instance, the presence or absence of specific words for colors, spatial directions, or time concepts in different languages can shape how speakers mentally represent these phenomena. While the strongest version of linguistic relativity has been debated, research continues to show that language can subtly guide attention, memory, and cognitive processes in culturally meaningful ways. Cultural concepts such as kinship, gender roles, social hierarchy, politeness, and social identity are deeply embedded in language. Kinship terms, for example, vary across cultures, reflecting how communities organize familial relationships and obligations. Some languages have extensive systems, distinguishing maternal and paternal relatives or different levels of social closeness, while others use more general terms. Gender roles are often encoded in linguistic structures, such as gendered nouns, pronouns, and honorifics, shaping the way speakers perceive and express gender in daily interactions. Similarly, politeness strategies, honorifics, and speech registers reveal how language encodes respect, deference, authority, and solidarity, reflecting broader social norms and values.